Todd Lockwood. The name conjures up three things: dragons, dungeons, and magic. It also conjures up his name. I suppose that's probably the first thing it conjures, really. But I don't know much about conjuring, I'm not a witch. But what I do know is coming up in a few moments is an interview with Todd. And sooner we get to that, the sooner we will forget about the fact that I wrote this script after taking Ambien. So let's get to the interview right away.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
Hey, hi, Aaron.
How are you doing today on this fine day?
I'm well.
Well, that's good. That's good, because the first thing I'd like to talk about is, guess what? Art. That would be a shocking thing, right? So,
I see a Phyrexian Obliterator behind you.
Yes. And actually, I might as well skip to that one. So I'm always curious to know what type of direction you get and what parts of the artist are in the designs of it. So explain to me the creation process behind the Phyrexian Obliterator.
Well, the design of the creature itself was done by another artist. Gosh, it's been so long, I'm not sure I can remember his name. He went by a one-word name. He worked at Wizards for a short period of time right before I arrived.
Is he?
Maybe. So my task was, he probably did that as part of the concept push, which they do for every set of Magic. They bring in a bunch of artists who work with the in-house art directors and artists, and they lay out the general look and feel of the milieu so that when they contract artists, they send them a source book, a guidebook, a visual guide to what things look like. So the Phyrexian had been designed, but the object of the card then was to put him in a pose and make him menacing and do him in color and have some fun with it.
Well, he certainly is menacing, and one thing that I love about him is that you can never be quite sure whether or not those are his eyes or those are his nose. The way things are positioned, you're just not entirely sure what's.
I know, right? That's Izzy completely.
But
or whoever.
But the coloring, though, I mean, is that designed too? Because I've noticed that purple and green tend to be a good indicator of a dangerous animal in nature. Was that something you had put into it?
Right. The reference I used was black and white, so I just wanted to put meaty colors in certain places, like in the rib cage and the mouth, so that you're not sure whether that's inside or outside or wet or just what. And then red and green are opposites, but those touches of purple too. Purple, orange, and green are always sort of a creepy combination.
Right. And
yeah, that's why Joker is always purple and green, or purple, orange, and green.
Yeah, that's a good point. There is something disturbing about that color combo.
Yeah, if you take the three primary colors, you got yellow and you got red and you got blue. Well, those are your primaries, but if you mix any of them, you get the tertiary colors between, which are purple, orange, and green. And so it's like you're seeing the primaries, but none of them in pure form. So it's kind of viscerally disturbing.
Did you ever hear about the story, the reason why Wes Craven decided to choose the color of the color that Freddy Krueger wore, the wintergreen and red? He had read in a psychology book that those were the harshest colors for the eyes to actually see together at once. And that was the reason why he picked the colors for Freddy's sweater.
That makes sense. I like that. You notice, like in what was that movie with Bruce Willis and Osmond?
Oh my God! With Haley Joel Osment, the Fifth Element, Sixth Sense.
Sixth Sense. Yeah, the colors are muted throughout the thing until there's danger on the way, and then you start to see red.
Wow.
Whether it's a sweater or a picture on the wall or a balloon, that kind of thing.
I'm gonna have to rewatch that, because that movie was such a, spoiler alert. That movie was such a when you saw it for the first time, you were just kind of like, And then
Yeah. Anybody who hasn't seen it yet, pause the interview, go watch the movie, and come back.
yeah, definitely. It's definitely don't want to be the biggest spoilers of all time, but
It's
it's a great movie. It truly is.
it's
And Toni
Shyamalan's
Collette.
best.
Toni Collette. I mean, why isn't she won an Oscar already? I mean,
I know. She's such a chameleon.
she is. And since we were on the subject of Freddy Krueger fire, it's a good transition, right? You have a thing for fire in your paintings, a very disturbing and oftentimes torturous use of fire. You do seem to take a great, I don't want to say joy because I'm not accusing you of being a sociopath, but you seem to take a great amount of interest in showing people burning to death in the most horrible ways.
Well, if you're painting a red dragon, that's the obvious thing to do, I suppose.
I mean, you're not incorrect, but my goodness, you certainly do not candy coat it. It is not a Disney dragon, which is interesting though, by the way, because I had read that the Maleficent dragon was sort of the impetus for your dragon love growing up.
Possibly, it's one of my oldest childhood memories. I'm seeing it through the windshield of the family car, which means it's a drive-in theater. So I'm very small.
Was it terrifying? Was it fascinating? What was it like?
I think it was just fascinating. Yeah. I'm not a kid who ever lay in bed awake afraid of monsters under the bed. That was my brother. I would beg to watch Friday Night Creature Features. Please, it won't scare me. It scares Kip. Send Kip to bed. Let me watch it.
And did it scare you? Did you ever eat your words?
No, the only thing that ever bugged me was something I saw maybe when I was 6 or 7, and it was on a black and white TV, and I think it was a black and white sci-fi movie from the 50s. And at one point, these guys are running along this scaffolding, and they come to a giant eyeball. Oh. And I can't think of the name of the movie. It came from outer space. That one cracked me up because you can see zippers on the backs of the aliens. But at one point, they pierce this eyeball in order to get through it. And that disturbed me for a long time.
That did it for you. That was the one that finally sailed it home for you.
Another, at that very young age, another black and white movie again on TV when I was really small, of some Indians have captured a cowboy and they're torturing him with fire. And that stuck with me for a while. So maybe there is a little something to that. But then fire is scary.
Oh, fire. Yeah, most definitely. But yeah, that would make sense. I mean, well, I hate to quote Wes Craven. Well, I don't hate to quote him. He was a very brilliant guy, but he always said that horror films were the boot camp for the psyche. And the reason why it's healthy to watch them is because it helps prepare our brains for things that we, can't really prepare for unless they're happening to us. And then if that's happening, it's not necessarily the best kind of option. So it sort of gives us a run through. And so, who knows, maybe that early experience of being haunted by somebody being set on fire, followed you throughout your career as far as themes go. And you've certainly,
but then I had a fascination with car crashes when I was little. Really? Especially if the car went off a cliff. But that happened on TV all the time.
Did you like that movie Crash?
Yeah, I believe I did, yeah. But I got a realistic sense of trajectory and ballistics from watching things like that. The difference between a body falling off a roof and a dummy falling off a roof,
So did you watch like actual footage, or how did you get your hands on sort of
just movies and TV? Sometimes when the bad guy falls to his death, you can tell it's a dummy because it doesn't fall right. And other times you can tell it's an actor, but you never see him hit the ground. The stunt man, I assume. Right. And they just fall differently.
What would you say the best car crash in history of film is?
Oh my goodness. That's tough because they're commonplace anymore. I remember one of the first ones that made a huge impact was a John Wayne movie, and there's a car on the beach, and it was the first time they rigged a car with a cannon basically inside that fired a log into the ground to get it to fly up into the air and flip over.
Oh,
And now it's become like a common tactic, and you see a lot of it.
they still do that now?
Yeah, that was like the proving ground. It's like Bullet was this amazing car chase at the time, and you watch it, it's still good, but it's over like that. But it was the beginning of much that was to follow. Anyway.
So you worked your way into the role-playing game of Dungeons and Dragons, and that's really kind of where you got your sea legs, right? As far as a professional artist, correct?
Yeah, I did advertising for 14 years before I attended my first convention, and by that point I was done with beer cans and art directors at big ad agencies, and I needed a better class of work, or I was going to hang up my brushes and get a real estate license.
Oh my goodness, that was a very I'm glad that didn't happen. But
I'm torn. Sometimes I wish I had, but
do you ever think of doing like a science fiction Coors beer can or something just for funsies? Like, I don't know, like one with a giant eyeball popping out and just
I don't know.
I mean, just as like, I don't know if it would be a fuck you, but it's sort of like I don't know, like an Andy Warhol except much more talented would be.
No, that kind of art, I can appreciate it, but it's not ever what drew me to art. I like narrative.
I do too, and I like narrative and skill and
yeah. I mean, what drew me to art was narrative. I learned to draw by making my own comic books when I was a kid.
And
in my mind, I was telling a movie or a TV show, so I was writing and drawing at the same time.
What were some of your comics about? Like, what would you say you're like, if you were to like sort of give me a synopsis of one of your favorite ones? What
I didn't finish very many of them because I'd get a great idea and I'd get started. But like I would do a parody of King Kong or a parody of superheroes. I had these cartoon Martian characters that I drew at the time, sort of big-eyed aliens, and so they stood in for human beings in a lot of it. But then I also would draw like realistic crime stories and science fiction things, spaceships, and Star Trek was a huge influence on me, as were the science fiction movies of the late 50s and 60s, early 70s. Formative, stuff like Forbidden Planet, and I'm sorry, I could talk about movies all day, but
I mean, I love movies too. I'm a huge cinephile. I love all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, but like Planet of the Apes and Beneath the Planet of the Apes kind of woke up my nascent sociological awareness, that sort of thing. Forbidden Planet was a brilliant story in its own right. The id.
Oh, right, definitely. And I loved Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I love all of the Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I mean, if there just could be a better allegory for just like, I mean, it seems to fit no matter what decade it's being remade in.
The Thing from Outer Space, that's the one where I saw the zippers and the costumes on the back of the aliens.
Okay, so is that the one with the eyeball? Was that the...
No, that one I don't remember the name of. They were on another planet and they had to escape, and so they were in their spacesuits, and it was all very strange. I was only 6. I had no comprehension of what I was looking at, really. The story made no sense to me.
So yeah, it traumatized you. Yeah, Freddy Krueger got me in the 80s. That was my thing. I couldn't. I was 5 years old, and there was this video store that had a huge cutout of him, and was not going to go in and would not.
That red and tennis ball green got you at an early age.
Yes, plus the burns and the knives for fingers and the slashing of the children, but also the colors. So you then when you stepped into Dungeons and Dragons, you really got a chance to sort of like to feel out the world of who you were inspired by, Frazetta, and you got a chance to do Asimov's science fiction magazine. And that must have been such an incredible moment of validation for you.
It was, yeah, it really truly was. I hadn't looked at it that way, but you're right. It's what I had been clamoring to do, was that sort of work. I had these agents in New York that weren't interested in it. I'll never forget. I did a sample painting for a supposed science fiction book. It wasn't that great of a painting in hindsight, but I worked really hard on it and sent it to my agents in New York and said, I want to get some of this kind of work. And I'll never forget Sam Bernstein calling me up and saying, "You don't want to do that stuff. There's no money in that. Yachts and golfers. That's where the money is, my boy. Yachts and golfers." I didn't want to paint yachts and golfers.
I,
I wanted to paint science fiction and fantasy.
yeah, plus, I mean, like, I don't, Asimov did okay. I mean, he was crying all the way to the bank.
Yeah. Well, that's what he really meant. There's no money in that for me.
But and yet, I mean, he was also wrong, and because, and I say this with all due reverence, I believe that anybody who can make a living off of being an artist is an accomplishment in and of itself. It puts you in a select group of people, and even more so for the fact that you are celebrated as the artist that you are. And so when you got involved with in 1997 is when you got involved with Wizards of the Coast, but you also before then you got
97. Yeah.
Pardon me?
97.
Would I say?
You said 87.
I'm sorry, brain farted.
That would have been nice, but no.
You also did a little art for XX Xenophile.
Yeah, that was in my freelancing before TSR.
Now,
just picking up whatever gigs I could from conventions, and this work was available, so I took some.
It looks kind of funsies. I mean, you're not the first artist from Magic that I've interviewed that did artwork for it. I can tell you that much. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think Anson did some artwork for it, but
oh, really? That's funny. I know Bob Eggleton did one.
Yeah, there's a whole like list of wonderful people. I mean, maybe not the best game for the prudish, but
probably not. I think it's sort of the opposite of prude.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't love a little mild sadomasochism, homosexuality, exhibitionism with their scrambled eggs in the morning?
I don't know that any of the cards I did went to those hallways, but
oh, there was no scrambled eggs. Well, that's just
no scrambled eggs. Yeah.
So what was your first assignment for Wizards? Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, I did some Spellfire or for Wizards. After I arrived at Wizards, what was the first painting I worked on there? It might have been a Dragonlance cover with one of the bad guy warriors walking down the street. Can't think of the title. There's a magic shop behind him, and a wizardess or a witch or a sorceress.
And
outside.
And by this time too, you seem to have won. You've won more Chelsea awards than I mean, you got, well, let's see, like consecutive 96, 97, 98, 99.
I had a crowd of them, yeah.
I mean, that's nuts.
It was nuts. That was also a period when I was interested in ASFA. I was the vice president of ASFA for a couple of years, and
really
did what I could to get them on the internet, because the internet was this new thing that was starting to create waves. And you have to be on the internet now, but that was my big push. That, and to get gaming art added to the scope of work they would recognize.
That's very noble. And I'm actually literally the analog to digital generation. I'm the eldest millennial you can be. I'm 1981. So I remember a time when phones were in walls, and when I started college, it was suggested to have internet, but not necessary, which it changed very quickly. But I mean, it seems kind of odd now to say to maybe a young person, like, well, pushing it onto the internet was my big deal. But at the time, that was sort of that really was a push, because Not everybody was convinced that this was going to be something that it became.
And not everybody knew how to do it, including me.
Well, but so how did you manage to do that? Did you sort of like teach yourself HTML, or what did you do?
Well, no, we found somebody who could do the work, and I don't remember that gentleman's name now. No, I needed help with my my own personal website several years later. So no, it was just that I felt like it needed to be done early while it was, doable, and why you could get the domain name you wanted, and it just seemed important to me.
I mean, it was a good choice if you ask me. Now let's see here. So a couple of things that I want to talk about. Now you do seem to be a big proponent of mythology. You use it a lot obviously in your artwork, and I had I had read that you are Joseph Campbell, a fan of Joseph Campbell.
Yeah, mega fan.
Me too. Such a super smart guy. I often think, what would he say about this and what would he say about that? He's one of those voices you just kind of miss.
Yeah, I really do. I read his 4 thick tomes on the transformation of myth through time.
He he was so brilliant, and he influenced so many people that I look up to. I mean, like from all the way to I mean, people like you to Tori Amos. I mean, his
George Lucas.
George Lucas. I mean, there really is not a lot of artists who he didn't end up I mean, at least artists I believe who are of note influencing. I mean, he's just sort of that kind of guy. What would you say your favorite Joseph Campbell myth / lesson was?
Oh, wow. Well, I quote him often to students. He said, if you follow your bliss, doors will open where you did not know there were doors.
That's a good one, yeah.
And that's the one that sticks with me the most. But what I most loved was how he demonstrated the way religions really do transition from one to another and influence each other and change over time. They want to think that they're, there's religions that want to profess that they're the holy, purely, perfectly created one that sprang whole out of God's forehead, and they've all already changed. That none of them are what they began as.
True, yes. It's fascinating as well to think that there was a time when all of these societies were not connected and at all whatsoever, yet there are these synchronicities that pop up in all the world religions. I mean, whether it be sort of like the notion of like the phoenix, right, dying and rising, Jesus Christ. I mean, the similarities between Buddha and Jesus's journey,
Zoroaster and a number of others. Yeah.
And
he rose from the dead after 3 days, and
right.
it happens in astrology too. They're all allegorical to astrological stories when you get down to the base level, which is fascinating to me.
Yeah, it's fascinating because you'd think these sort of popped up individually in a sense from one another, but it comes back to that quote that he says. I love the quote that he says dreams are public, I'm sorry, myths are public dreams and dreams are private myths. And I think that's probably where
I like that.
Right? Joseph Campbell. He's too good.
Say that again. Myths are public dreams.
Myths are public dreams.
Are private myths. Got it. Like that.
I feel like that would explain where a lot of it comes from, right? Because it would make sense if we're evolving, right, as a species, and we all are sort of hitting these, points, separately from one another. Well, then, yeah, we're all going to assume that we have the answer, when in actuality, it just seemed to be like maybe just it was just a myth that was bubbling up that came out to be. That's just my thoughts on the subject.
Well, it's a continuum. It's
right,
constantly changing. The whole multiverse idea, right? Every decision, every instance spawns infinite new universes.
I
supposed
know, I know.
right?
I think about that every time I break wind. I'm like, I wonder how many galaxies I just created and or destroyed. Um,
I've created an infinity of new hells.
oh yeah, well, that's exactly what it's like when I break wind, I'll tell you that much. Um, so one thing that you actually got to do that is pretty significant is you got to design the third edition of Dungeons and Dragons. Now, how obviously your credentials, you know, were helpful, but how do you get approached to do that? And what is that process like? I mean, is it as fulfilling as it seems like it would be?
Oh, that was dream work. I was working for Wizards of the Coast at the time. They'd brought over the art staff from TSR, moved us from Lake Geneva to Washington State, and so I was on staff. Um, but there was one of the cartographers there, Sam Wood, was just a fantastic artist and a very creative mind. And when it was proposed around the office that there was going to be a new third edition of Dungeons and Dragons, um, the first to bring up the idea that D&D finally needed a style guide was Don Murin, who is the last surviving member of the Lake Geneva days Dungeons and Dragons staff. She's
Wow.
still at Wizards of the Coast. But anyway, it was her idea that we should have a style guide for third edition. And I was immediately on board with that. And I'd been watching Sam draw, and I knew how brilliant he was. And so we just pitched a style guide, the three of us. And so Sam and I got to work. It was one of the most fun times of my career. It was like being a kid again and sitting with a friend at the kitchen counter, drawing whatever. Because we just cranked out monsters and dragons and elves and body types. And, you know, it was the most fun you can have and get paid at the end of the day.
Now, if you had to pick a piece, I'm going to give you a double question. A piece that you did for Magic that just came as easy as could be, just you got the assignment, it was just like spoosh, it's out. Which one would that be versus one that gave you such a hard time that you almost, you know, exploded?
um How, you know, I could pick a number of them. Niv Mizzet, the first one, was a lot of fun. I had already done the concept art for him because I was part of the concept push for that set. And so when it was time to paint him, I just he had so much personality to begin with. I guess that's part of it, is just draw the personality and the rest comes together. The Angel of Light is one that I remember and that was an oil painting. That was before I started working digitally. But I remember that painting just clicked at every stage, from the reference to the drawing. The painting just went like clockwork. It doesn't always happen. Is there one that I struggled with, though? I suppose there's some that turned out, like I did a new version of Carador that I was never particularly happy with. I think it's Carador.
You mean the one that was for Commander Legends?
Maybe.
Or at least it was used in Commander Legends?
My website is closed down currently, or I'd just look it up and tell you.
I'm on the Gatherers website for Wizards.
Yeah.
It's the blue spirits, the legendary creature centaur spirit.
Oh, that was Carador. Yeah, the Ghost Army. Now this was a named dragon flying just above the treetops, as if you were looking up through the trees.
Moonveil Dragon?
No, it was well before that.
Do you know what color of the card it was?
I probably haven't ever put it on my website because I didn't care for it much.
Really? Do you know what color the dragon was?
I think it was green.
Green. Could he been not Rith? Ravenous? No, not Ravenous. Baloth. That's a Baloth.
Baloth was fun.
There's the Colony Hydra, but he's not a dragon.
No, older than that.
Let's
It's
see.
not important.
Well, I am curious, and I'm already here, so I might as well. But what? So that, I mean, that one gave you a hard time, but I mean, if it's any consolation, we can't tell that it gave you a hard time.
Okay, good.
They're all like gorgeous. It's like I'm gonna mispronounce this. Kyrion Dryad. I mean, that's just like that's just so
Oh, the
lovely.
Kyrian Dryad?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just I love how you're able to sort of, not sort of, you're able to just create these moments of serenity, and yet these also intense moments of violence, and they don't seem to betray your style. In fact, I think Kiss of the Amisha is probably one of the like kindest Magic the Gathering cards I think that exists
Yeah,
in the game.
I always say that's the sweetest Magic card ever painted.
It's
Or the
just,
tenderest.
you don't see um that kind of like sweetness in Magic a lot. It's
Not very often. No.
You kind of get more of the Kalidas type thing, which by the way, really cool vampire designs there. I
That
love
was fun.
I
And then
love the
turning him around for
transition.
his evolved form, but in the same pose, was also fun.
Now, do you use source models for those types of paintings, or do you just go by whatever's in your noodle?
Um, well, I try to shoot my own reference for most things because it's simpler to know what pose your design dictates and be able to rough that pose together well enough to shoot it. And then you've got perfect reference and you get the best possible painting rather than looking for something found on the internet that you can safely adapt. And that's like, when I was in art school, we would use a rub down typeface called Letraset to do our mock-ups and stuff. And you could tell when somebody was running out of money in Letraset because it started to dictate the design.
Really?
Um, God, that's an archaic reference, but
That's interesting though.
um, you want to shoot your own reference. You want to be able to get a caricature pose, an action sketch of your positions of all your characters before you shoot reference, so that you don't waste a lot of time trying to draw something difficult. You look at a painting like Bar Fight.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I had to know what each of those characters were doing and where the light was coming from and where the camera was situated relative to them before I shot any reference. Or I
Right.
couldn't have composed that in a timely manner.
Do you save any of those old photos or those old reference shots by chance? Do you have them
I
like
have many of them, especially from the digital age. They're at least on discs when I saved all the backup stuff. Nobody uses disk backups anymore.
if
Yeah.
there is any chance that you have them and you find them, please send them my way, because I love for that kind of stuff. It's just it thrills me to no end to see sort of the behind the scenes making of what goes into it. And another like what's kind of like fun is that you got a chance to sort of do your like a little bit of a well, it's not a little bit, it's a staple. Sun Titan, I can tell you right now, like Sun Titan is I according to this, it's been reprinted 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8. It's been reprinted at least like 9 times.
Really?
Yeah, that card is unstoppable. I just had to actually order it for a new commander deck that I'm building.
Oh, I like that painting. I like that carry. I worked on the um, concept push for that set too. So,
And
some of the things I was painting, I had already had the luxury of spending time designing. It was just a matter of putting them in a dramatic pose and, getting the narrative down.
and what were the sets that you actually were concept pushing for?
Ravnica, um, that one with the Sun Titan. Which one's that? But I worked on Ravnica, which was fun because um, that was my first immersion into the mythology and mechanics of Magic. Honestly, I don't play the game. I was there for Dungeons and Dragons, the storytelling thing. But I had fun with that because we had to build the guilds where you take the elemental colors and then you have to figure out how do you combine them and what does that result in?
Oh,
What does it look
wow.
like and what are their personalities? So like the black white, you combine black and white, you get the angel of pain. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that
That's
sort of thing.
yeah,
That was
that
fun.
angel of it was in the Angel of Despair painting.
Angel of despair. Yeah.
Oh my God, that is a haunting like that is a
I
haunting piece.
originally designed her in white robes wrapped with barbed wire. And I
That
guess
also
they
would have
decided
been
that was a little too far. No, new art director they had just hired, Jeremy Jarvis. One of the first things he did was design her new armor. He redesigned her. So when I painted her, I kept his armor, but I shaved her hair off and otherwise left her the way I had designed her in her
I
barbed wire shift.
I think the shaved head is a nice touch.
Well, especially
Because
with that eclipse right over her shoulder, you get all these round shapes together.
right, yeah, the circles on her outfits and then the circle of that is around her gloves and it's just I mean, and I guess it also plays against the whole sort of archetype of the flowing hair of, you know, the angel, and they're always so, you know, like effervescent, and then she's just sort of like, well, no, I'm bald and I'm gonna really
No,
fuck you up.
this is not about my hair.
No. Mhm. This is about you suffering
This is about
real
your
hard.
pain. That's right.
Yeah, she definitely brings me despair. I'll tell you that much. Um,
And that was one of the fun things about that set was like the eclipsed sun is like a perfect representation of black and white
mhm.
in combination.
And gleeful sabotage is just like it's so messed up and demented in a fun way. I mean, just like these creatures just wreaking havoc on this poor instrument. It's like so
Oh,
sad.
oh, oh, that one. Yeah, yeah. The sentient harp is being beaten apart by the goblins or whatever they are.
Do you ever feel bad when you like have to do something terrible to like a creature in a painting? Are you ever like, oh, I kind of feel like a little bad that I have to do this?
No. I just want the best narrative that I can get.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying I mean, your narrative's great, but I always would, I guess I would be like, oh, I'm sort of making a little pocket of hell for something. It's,
uh, I don't know that I ever felt sorry for them. Maybe it's happened. I'd have to think to come up with it. It happens when
well,
I'm writing all the time.
now that happens when you write. Okay. So that, okay, well, there you go. So, and that's also something that I want to go into. So you have quite a career as a writer as well. How did that evolve? Did it evolve alongside with your artwork? And, you know, how
Well,
do you,
it did. Like I mentioned earlier, I learned to draw by making my own comic books. Well, I learned to write at the same time. I was learning both. When I was in art school, I was writing a novel, but I was writing it longhand, and I didn't have access to a word processor in 1979. So eventually, its time came and went, and I kept that writing muse entertained with scraps from the D&D table, DMing from my friends.
mhm.
But about 2003, that the muse just bit me again. I was working on a project in which I was going to express some opinions about things, and it was just going to be loosely built around an art book in which I depicted dragons at war, a dragon war.
Mhm.
And when I started writing the notes for the framework story, I realized that I just had more to say than pictures alone could tell, and characters who needed their stories told. Um, so in a way, I went back to school. I started attending seminars and reading all the books on the craft of plot and arc, and um, most notably the work of Christopher Vogler, who wrote a book called The Writer's Journey,
Mm.
um, which has as one of its pillars the work of Joseph Campbell, just to bring that full circle.
Really?
Um, and his work is very prevalent in plot structure and story arc. because it exists in much the same state throughout human history and throughout our mythologies.
Mm-hmm.
It all very much relates to the same emotional center that we have. Anyway, I spent a good 10 years writing the million words you have to write before you can consider yourself a writer. And then through some luck and contacts and meeting the right people, I managed to get The Summer Dragon published in 2016. And I am within a chapter and a half of finishing the sequel.
I was going to ask about that. I was going to ask when the sequel is due. So tell me what it is. What's the different feeling that you get when you finish a book versus finishing a painting? Is it more of a catharsis because you've been living with the writing for so much longer?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, some paintings can be cathartic that way, like the Kali Prakriti drawing I did for my entertainment, or Cerberus, which you may have seen on my website.
Mm-hmm.
Because those were personal pieces in which I was venting or having something to say. The Kali piece is absolutely runs downstream from my absorption of everything Joseph Campbell.
You have to give props to, I mean, it's a fascinating story. It is. It's so unlike anything that any, American or Western religion would even dare touch.
Yeah, I don't know. I find beauty in all the faiths, and I also find silliness in all of them. The things they cling to versus the deeper meanings that, I guess I'm more of a Gnostic, not agnostic, but
Agnostic.
Gnostic.
Yeah. I think that you have to laugh at some of it because some of it is silly. I mean, like, the word burning bush is just funny, and I don't care who you are, I'm going to laugh at that. And
well, what did it mean in the original language? What did he actually see? A bush on fire?
I am not sure. I mean, I'm Jewish, but my Hebrew does not go down that well. I mean, I got my bar mitzvah and that was about it. I'm honestly better at German, which
well, I always wonder about that because language, it's a complex structure which perpetuates itself. It's like a virus. It moves from creature to creature, but it is also constantly evolving. And when I think about things like burning bush, I would love to know the etymology of that, because like a word like octopus means 8 feet.
Yeah.
That could just as easily mean spider, but we decided to use octopus for the sea creature, and we came up with spider for the spiders, even though it has 8 feet. So back in the day, me catch 8 foot. You burn fire.
It's also, I also am fascinated by slang, like how something can be like back in the 80s, if something was bad, that meant it was good. But then and now it seems that if something's sick, like if somebody goes, oh, that's sick, that means it's good. And then
it's way cool. Yeah.
And something going viral is considered a positive. It's very odd. It's like pretty soon I feel like it's going to be like, oh my God, that is so rampant diarrhea. And you'll be like, oh my God, thank you so much.
I hope we don't come to that too soon.
I mean, well, who knows? The Kardashians are no good sometimes, so you can't really be.
Depends on who you're hanging out with, I guess.
Yep. It's
so anyway, true. Yeah, the constantly evolving nature of language alone casts shadow on any specificity about the original intent of anything. I've read once, this may not be true, but it made sense when I read it. Given the source, it's been a long time now, so I can't cite it. But the idea that a Muslim who goes to heaven for having murdered himself will get 40 virgins. I read that is a mistranslation from one Arabic language to another, in which the golden raisins of knowledge, the word for that phrase, or the words for that phrase, sounded a lot like 40 virgins. And what do you want to die for? Raisins or virgins?
I mean, well, it
And
depends.
if I've offended anyone,
They
I
better be good
apologize. And
raisins.
if you can correct that myth or confirm that myth, I would love to know.
That kind of stuff is actually very interesting, and there are a lot of scholars who make the arguments that, especially when people, and I won't name faiths, but I'll say when people tend to bring hatred as a weapon via religion, and they say, well, this book says this or this book says that, and the scholars often argue that's not exactly what that meant, and you have to understand that this is a translation of that version, and through that translation there are people's political political influence that goes into it, and
Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live.
Yep. I mean, and it's just things get lost in translation. Is essentially what it means, and language is a living thing. It's weird, especially now on the internet. It seems like a new word's happening like every 5 seconds, and I mean, I can't keep up anymore. I'm just like, that's a thing. I remember when the word meme came out, and I was like, what's a meme? And I thought that Q was I thought Q is I had nowhere to pronounce it, so I was just like, keke. I don't know.
Oh, the word QUEUE.
Yeah,
like
I was like, I've never been to London. I didn't know that that's the word for line.
Old British word.
Yeah, I learned it from Netflix.
That's funny.
Do you have any of your original pieces that you've done still amongst you currently?
Not very many. I sold most of my D&D art to a collector. Kind of regret that in some ways, but that money helped me finish my first book, so I had to live on something while I wasn't painting, and it's a situation I find myself in right now. But I do still have the Silver Dragon. I still have the Dryad I painted for Magic the Gathering. Actually, it was for the magazine cover. What was the gaming magazine?
Which, by the way, which makes me wonder, why is your website currently down?
Currently down because we are still in the cleanup stages of an identity assault on our finances, and
oh no,
got into my online sales apparatus. They stole my Stripe account for the longest time.
Are you
Finally
serious?
got that back, although I probably won't use it again because our customer service was horrendous. They stole my Square Reader account, and I can't get Square Up to talk to me. But in the interim, I shut down everything connected with Stripe because I didn't want people going to my website thinking they were buying something,
Oh my
and the
God.
money is being stolen. So that's why the website's shut down.
Oh my God, that's
I need to
terrible.
get it back up again as we come into Christmas season. I'm depriving myself, but I'm also really determined to get this novel done because it's been 5 years, and I've already been told I won't get a release date until 2023, but I have interior illustrations to do yet. And so I apologize for the fact that my website is down, but that's the reason why. It's to protect everybody, and until I can rebuild the infrastructure of it.
Well, that certainly is an understandable reason to do so. It's not like you're, just, oh, I'm taking it down because, I didn't feel like updating it. I mean, like that's awful. That kind of thing can really, I mean, not just the financial ramifications, but it can mess with you psychologically.
Oh, it has.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. That sucks out loud.
For about a month, it was 12 hours a day of whack-a-mole. I listened to more bad music over 2 weeks than I think anybody should ever listen to in their life.
It's true, but is there any good music? I think maybe there's one song that I think I heard that was good music, and I kind of embarrassed to say like I dug it, but usually it's not very good. It's just not.
Yeah, it's bland for the masses, kind of.
It's no need for thinking music.
Right.
Now, one of the things that I like to ask all of the artists who were there sort of near the the beginning and who were there some during the earlier years. I know that you've had a hiatus from Magic, but with the releases of the secret layers that are coming out, and with a lot of the old artists sort of making they're either their returns via a secret layer or a guest spot, is there any sort of chance that we could see you returning to Magic for a one-off or for a few offs? Is that something that would be in the cards for you?
Yeah, I may return to Magic. I mean, I always enjoy working on Magic cards. They're always fun. They're always something different. You're not over art directed, or usually aren't. And I'm always happy to do them. And they pay enough to make it worthwhile to take some time out to do them. And anymore, if you do them in traditional media, somebody's going to snatch it up, which was not the case. I mean, it has been the case for a while, but the reason I started painting digitally was that I had a bunch of oil paintings that nobody wanted to buy, and I needed to generate income faster. The sales of originals was not part of my business model. I had to paint faster, so I learned digital paint.
Have you ever considered doing what a lot of artists are doing these days by repainting your digital creations to analog form?
I would hate every brushstroke.
You would?
I already painted that once.
Yeah. Is that how it would go for you?
Yeah, that's how it would feel for me. Yeah.
What about a reinterpretation of a character?
It's a possibility. That's certainly a possibility. I've done pen and ink or brush pen drawings of Drizzt to hang at shows just to turn around for a quick buck.
I mean, because Niv Mizzet just seems like he would be a blast to just do, because he's so cool looking, and you really have sort of like just his look is now because of you, and it's sort of impossible it's impossible to imagine Niv Mizzet without that, just like that spiky
frills. Yeah.
Like, he'll poke you, but it'll be cool when he does it.
Yeah. I like him looking like he has a mane. I think that's what I was kind of after, but it had to be made out of dragony parts. Yes,
dragony parts. Speaking of, what is that painting that is behind you that we see on the wall?
Oh, that's Kali Prakriti, the one I was speaking of earlier. Let's see if I can take that over there.
Oh, wow.
I don't know how good the camera on this laptop is, but yeah, I did that after my first science fiction fantasy convention. And it's Kali Prakriti. It's a combination of two Hindu goddesses. One is the goddess of creation, and the other the goddess of destruction, and combine them in sort of a yin yang sort of way.
That's so cool. It would be cool. You definitely could do a book along the lines of what you did with the World of Dragons, sort of the natural history of dragons. I could see you doing something like that with sort of the world religion icons as well, just with your knowledge and your.
That's a cool idea. That would be fun.
And yeah, I could see you rocking that, because if you, I mean, that's a unique take on Kali and the fact that you're intermingling the two. I'm so used to the traditional, like,
six-armed pointy teeth, belt of skulls. Yeah.
Husband underneath her feet with the, like, so But it is what it is. I actually have a huge pishwa of that in my living room that my dad got from India when he went there in college. So
Oh,
so
wow.
it's always a fun conversation piece.
Nice.
I always say it's a family portrait, and they're like, like it was.
Right. Well, if we're talking about cool pieces from foreign countries, I got to show you this one. You see him up there?
What is that?
It's an octopus carved out of the root ball of a tree from Indonesia.
Holy crap!
Is that cool?
How do people even? I mean, that is some
trying to get
skill.
it in the frame for you. There you go.
It blows my mind the amount of talent that you. I mean, like as somebody who's not a visual artist, the things that you guys can do is just it boggles the mind. I mean, you see it like you start off with a glob of paint, or you start off with like that person starts off with a chunk of wood, and then all of a sudden.
I know. When we saw that, I just thought it was one of the coolest things I'd ever seen. When we were doing San Diego Comic-Con, the guy in the booth next to us had all these masks and things that he imported from Indonesia. He would go to Bali and places around and commission artwork from the local artist, and he would encourage them to be creative. He never brought anything of that scale to the show, but we came to be friends with him, and his warehouse was in San Diego. So one year after the show, we went and looked at his warehouse, and he had some astounding stuff. And that octopus was one of them. You take the root ball of a tree, and the growth of the roots dictate the pose of the tentacles, and then you carve a octopus out of it.
Oh,
and so it's
wow.
lifelike and active and just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, that's so poetic because that's so cool. The tree's the one that's dictating the movement. The life is dictating the life.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, the
That's
octopus is a continuing representation of the life of that tree, in a way.
Yeah, and I mean, well, I've Lord knows if I have to be carved into anything, I would love to be made something that cool. But I have a feeling that it's not going to be as attractive. It just I don't know. Maybe there'll be a good Norman Batesy type fellow that'll take good care of me. But one can only hope. But before I let you go, I just wanted to make sure that is there anything that you have coming up on the horizon that you are allowed to talk about that you would like to promote? Obviously, you got your book that's on it's on the way to the finish line. But is there anything else that you would like to talk about?
The art tome that a great many people bought into 2 years ago on Kickstarter is almost to press. I thought we had finalized everything, but now apparently there's one more PDF proof I have to look at. And oh my God, I thought this would be done a year ago anyway, if not a year and a half. But it is approaching the finish line. So people can still buy into that on BackerKit, but they can't click through my website to find it. Well, if you go to Kickstarter and search on Found Worlds, that's the name of the art book, there's a link to BackerKit. You can still pre-order stuff. So that's coming up. Hopefully sooner rather than later. It's going to be busy next year.
And if somebody were interested in getting a hold of your books or your, along those lines, what would be the best means of doing that? Obviously, since with your website down, do you have a preference of what site to use, or would you say to contact you directly?
Well, you can still get the Summer Dragon on Barnes and Noble, I believe, and if not, you can get it on Amazon. But if you have a favorite bookseller who isn't Amazon, get it from them.
True.
If my website was up, you could get it from me, and it would have a signature in it. This is another get my website back together.
What about if somebody sent you via like a PayPal or something? Would that?
My PayPal is locked down right now too for the same reason. I just want to make sure
Right.
nothing unusual is connected to it, and I need to. I mean, it's literally locked down to a point where it can't be activated again without a phone call from me. So nobody's going to sneak in with a phone number or an email address and pretend they're me. If I've learned anything, it's two-factor authentication on everything.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, big time. I mean, it's a shame that people are such scumbags. But you know, and it's a shame that it happened to such a cool guy, you know, like you. I mean, not that it deserves to happen to anybody, but like if they were less cool, I would be less bothered, I suppose. But that's about it. So thank you so much again for taking the time to talk to me. It was a great treat, and I will definitely be on the lookout for your new book as it hits the horizon.
Yep, I'll probably leak stuff as leakable stuff happens.
Leaking is the best thing ever, unless it's in your underwear.
Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
When people say to me, I have to pee badly, I say, no, pee well.
That's sort of Yoda.
There you go. There's your parting advice.
Yes, everybody, pee well.
And aim carefully. Yes.
And what's that?
And aim carefully.
Right. Oh, that's not going to happen in the dark of the night for me.
Okay. Thanks, Aaron.
Thank you.
Okay, can I just say, how great is Todd Lockwood's laughter? He's this very intense looking guy, and yet his laugh simply disarms with charm. You know, I have been told that I have a charming laugh. Cameraman, say something funny.
I don't know what to say.
Well, I can't tell myself a joke.
What do you call a person with no body and no nose?
Dead?
Nobody knows.
Nobody knows what?
Is what you call a person with no body and no nose.
Oh, God. Oh, cut the camera. I gotta pee.
Bye-bye.